Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charnley. This is another Derbyshire church. This is the Church of St Andrew, Radbourne. Now, Radbourne is as you can see, it's a medieval church. Certainly its origins are almost certainly in the 13th century, the early first half of the 13th century. It's been altered in the 14th, 15th century and since. Radbourne is very much a country house church. Radbourne Hall is on the hill to the south of the church, to orient myself there, and the church it's ready to find because there's a nice big sign pointing down the little lane that says Parish Church, but it's well away from the road. It's tucked back next to a rambling old rectory. Obviously, as usual, has been sold off. And this is a country house church. It's got memorials. It's got a whacking great pew at the west end, which is the big house pew. It's quite a lovely building, and the stonework is decent. Actually, the stonework's very good. And the memorials are very, very interesting. So let's have a look around and explore this interesting Derbyshire building. So we start as usual at the west end. This building, unlike little Dalbury where they went last, I didn't mention the possibility of Trustley, but the church warden of Trustley doesn't allow video filming in the church. That's fine, that's up to them. So, but this is, say, Radbourne, very lovely. It's just up the road from Dalbury. It's been Victorianised, but not over much, and there's still some really interesting things to see. It's not a building that's been completely gutted, again, because of the big house element. And the first thing to see is the big house pew. The big house pew. Here we are, and you can see box pews, and they're all in what is effectively a sort of mini gallery at the west end. We've got there's a funerary hatchment. These are displayed at funerals. There's the canopy, there's not font canopy, the font cover rather. It's a counterweighted example made of curious old carving, and it goes up and down quite easily. It's obviously in the up position now. Arcade there, it looks 14th century to me. No expert in these things, but I have seen plenty of 14th century churches, and you can see that this side it's all used for storage, but this side is still used for seating. Again, big house. We have an old photograph. It's actually a photograph of the church as it is right now, so it's really a Victorian photograph. Doesn't show us anything new, anything that we won't see just by going round the inside here. This church is one like Dalbury that's normally open. The only time I found Dalbury not open was to do with COVID. Font is Victorian, it appears, but a fairly decent one. In imitation of... look at that. This font is too big, so we put a small font inside our font so that we can, well, you know the rest. Single aisle, north side as usual with aisles. Nice, these are old bench ends, these are medieval bench ends that have been incorporated. That is not a back, that's an end. And here we are, down the North Island. You can see at the end of the North Island, quite a common place to find these memorials. We have two very, very different memorials. You've got here this is believed to be by Grinling Gibbons. The interesting thing is that the inscriptions have all worn off. So there's evidence it definitely existed, but no one's quite sure whose it is. And we've got these two big fat putty at the top, and yes, they are anatomically correct. There is this... Yes, there's actually a third memorial here, but of course the really impressive one, after Grinling Gibbons, is this one, which is looks to be 15th century from the style of the clothing. And here we have a knight and a lady, and it's very, very typical of these Derbyshire alabaster memorials. As you can see here, she is, and of course they've already been painted. She has got a headdress. Very important, in the Middle Ages, women covered their hair when they went out. So any film that shows medieval women with loose hair is historically inaccurate. She's got a couple of angels supporting her head there. Here is a knight, and he's in full armour. We've noted before how, because of the use of armour, there's actually quite a lot of memorials. Another one that was hiding behind the pew, so we have to look at that as well. He's got a dog. This is a type of dog known as a talbot. I believe they're extinct now. The breed died out, but the talbots were hunting dogs. Well, she's got her little. This is very, very so typical of these memorials. Her little dogs are chewing the hem of her dress. You've got a little dog there, and here's the other little dog. And of course, ladies would have little dogs in those days. One of the things they used them for was hand warmers. Could get quite cold. At the west end of the aisle is the tower, offset tower. You can see there's his sword again in. People learn so much about arms and armour from these effigies because they were intended to be accurate, and the same about women's clothes. This is supposed to be accurate. This is supposed to represent. This is what they would have looked like in life. How different from this triumphal neoclassical memorial with its big, fat, putty, healthy babies. So let's say that, because they are. And here we have. This is interesting because this is in incised slab type. And here both the lady, who is closer to us, and the gentleman, who is farther away, they are both wearing civilian clothes, as it were. So it tells you something about what. Now this again, this looks late 15th, early 16th century. He's tall, but look at that. His feet. You can see there has been some, shall we say, forced acknowledgement of the limitations of making something out of alabaster. So there we have them. I'm just going to see, there's a wall display. Here's another. We've got, here are the bodies of Henry, fourth son of German Pole of Radbourne, Esquire, and Dorothea, his wife. Oops, sorry about that. I need to secure something a little bit more tightly. You can see the 15th century, they've added this clerestory. That's a nice 14th century window there. So, what does it say about the effigies? So the effigies have not been conclusively identified. They may be Ralph Pole and his wife Joan. So I'm not quite sure who they are, but they're definitely members of the Pole family, who are the big house family here back in the day. A Victorian lectern. Again, you see the memorials. Nice Victorian lectern. Now here again, we have more people. Here is a medieval tomb cover. Here I shall move the booklets off, the guide books off the memorial, just so we can actually see the faces. Again, you can see she's got her elaborate headdress, and there he is. These are, I mean, they're sort of artwork that I could almost do, and I'm dreadful. I mean, really, they are not very well drawn, are they, these two? Maybe that's why they have the guidebooks on top of them. They are not well drawn at all. I mean, look at that. It's like you've got a schoolboy doing your funerary effigies. I do hope they got a discount on this one. Again, more poles, because all poles here. And there's the eagle lectern. So the screen, of course, is Victorian. We've got here a piscina. Memorial here to Harry Anthony Chandos Pole, Coldstream Guards Brigadier General, born 1869, died 1934. There we have the piscina for the side chapel that was there before the Reformation, which again would be to do with the Poles, because the Poles were here before the Reformation, as can be seen by their memorials. And of course, therefore that memorial back there is another Pole, because there's all Poles here. Through into the chancel, big Victorian organ, which is again quite typical. The fake pipes in the front here are now metal rather than being carved wood. Nice sedilia. You see here, these are early 13th century from their decoration. There's a rather shocked looking face there. And vestry, as is quite common, the vestry is tucked around behind the organ. There we have the aumbrys, nice east window. This is your allegorical figures of faith, hope, and of course in the middle, charity, and in loving memory of Violet Catherine Chandos Powell. Powells had intermarried with the Chandos family by this point. There's the piscina, again 13th century. Here we have a memorial to the Reverend John, it says Hunt, M.A., just in the ancient family of, so John Ice Hunt, just in the ancient family of Ice Hunt, Lahunt, of Lahunt of Stoke. Very difficult, but it's from Rutlandshire. And 30 years after this parish, he died in 1790. And then, only surviving child is Florence Matilda Fallow, so the last child, she dies in 1888. And then we have a memorial to Arthur Leslie Hopkins, rector, 1947 to 1969, and then Major John Wakeline Chandos Powell, Squire, 1913-1994, patron and 40 years church warden. So the family retained their links. We have there, you can see the squint. The squint here is very obviously, of course, to do with the chapel that would have stood in the north aisle. Now it looks right into the pulpit, meaning that the choir boys can theoretically peer at the back of the rector's cassock while he is preaching. Interesting reading desks. I do like those, actually, they're quite fun. And obviously the point that the family appears to be in residence explains why the family pew at the back is still in such good nick, because the family are still here, which is good. Because one of the things is, when the country house closes down, and often we end up with someone who has no concern at all for the area, which is a shame. And again, there's that interesting collection of old bench ends. So that's the inside here at Radbourne, a lovely country house church here in deepest Derbyshire. And so here we are outside at Radbourne. You can see it's quite a small building, as we noticed inside, and we're here right by the bridge over which the Poles would have come to, and probably still do, over which the Poles would have come to church when they walked. I suspect that at least sometimes, certainly older members of the family would have driven now, but this is the way that the Big House family would have come down to the church. The big house is on the hill behind the camera. You can see here we've got your nice offset tower and this nice long low Derbyshire church with the clerestory is there to change, as we see in other places, to change the pitch of the roof, so the roof then is more fashionable, and also the clerestory lets a bit more light in, which is always helpful. So let's have a look around the outside and see what there is to see. I've never been here before, so I don't know what's around the back. Radbourne Church St Andrews is part of a planned landscape around the big house. You can just see behind, just by the tower, part of the Victorian rectory. And as we pan around here, this is some of the parkland, and here's the bridge I was talking about, and up there in those trees is the big house, Radbourne Hall. The stream runs along here, so very impressive, lovely little building. You can see the difference between the older stonework, the 13th century stonework, and the 14th century above. Note the porch appears to at least have been rebuilt in the 17th, 18th centuries. The door is definitely 18th century. You can see there the spiky tower. That does look to be 14th century, that tower. Offset, of course, because originally it wouldn't have been a tower. And the church is 13th century. So the tower is an addition. It's always, to some extent, amazing. I expect some American listeners will be going, wow, 14th century is extension. Yep, 14th century is extension. Because that's what happens in some of these lovely, it's a beautiful building. It's a lovely spring day. They gave it, it's been a little bit unsettled, but here we have the East End again. This does look to be, perhaps, 14th century stonework. Old vicarage over there. Rectory, rather, because the rector's here. What's the difference? Well, the rector collects the tithes, the vicar doesn't. He's the vicar, that is the one acting in the place of the person who does collect the tithes, or let's say person, often it's an organisation like a monastery. And you can see there's a Victorian vestry and the tower. Rather interesting view there. Looks like multiple buildings, not just the one that it is. As is, I say, so common, the old rectory is now a private house. But of course the rector had his gate to get into the churchyard. North aisle. Can't do anything about the sun being there. Got to be a bit careful. It's been a little bit, but I mean, it's a bit muddy. But look at that. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er dales and hills, till all at once I came upon golden daffodils, indeed. And look at this, a beautiful spring day. Now, just a quick peep there. You see that bit of detached bay window? That would have been probably the study for the rector. And there's the north door blocked, because of course it is, because it's not used for anything. And if you're not using a door, what do you have? You have a draft you don't need. You'll also notice that there's clearly been some rebuilding there, because there's a big crack. Looks like there actually been subsidence, hence that whacking great buttress. But isn't it how wonderful it is? Little country house, estate church, and just so it's a lovely place to visit on a lovely spring morning, well, spring afternoon actually, like this. So we come round the West End, which is green from lichen growing on the stone. The stone is not green stone. You can see here what colour it really is, but not because of the West End, how the West End works. And there you can see the gables of the vicarage, which is a huge building. It's quite see one of the problems with these, because they were built for a family with servants. And you either these days, these days too big. So and here we have some of the Chandos Pole memorials and graves. And so there we have it, Radbourne, a hidden gem in Derbyshire. So I'd never been here before. One of these places, it is kind of back of beyond. There's really no village here anymore, and a few houses. It's very much an estate church, and I just didn't realize it existed, but it's so worth seeing, isn't it? Well, thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.